Item number 10 on the agenda is purchase of the Carolina Pride Car Wash Building. Manager Kathy.
Okay, good evening. I'll be glad to introduce this item, and then I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Senegal for a brief presentation. The community college has made a request to the Board of Commissioners to purchase the Carolina Pride Car Wash Building, which is located at 225 Crown Boulevard in Timberlake. This would be to relocate several of the community college's programs that are outgrowing their current space or have a need for updated space. This location is also along the 501 corridor, so it would provide easy access off of that main thoroughfare as well as visibility for prospective students. And the purchase price for the building is $7 million. The community college did receive a $5 million allocation from the state in this year's budget, and that was for capital as well as equipment needs for an advanced technology center. So this is to assist them in leveraging those funds by contributing just over $5 million of county funds towards the purchase, having additional funding come from PCC through that state allocation, and then using the remainder of that state allocation for upfits as well as equipment within the space. So I did, I signed a memorandum of understanding, a non-binding MOU, back on January 19th following board discussion on this topic in negotiating the purchase of the property. And based on that memorandum of understanding, we have received a draft purchase and sale agreement from the property owner. The agreement has been reviewed by our county attorney, and you have received a copy. There's a hard copy before you today for your consideration. You received it earlier today in electronic format. As we have been continuing to work out the details, there's still a few more that need to be ironed out, but following the presentation, I'll be glad to go through the highlights of the proposed agreement that is due for consideration, and as well as what the process would look like moving forward if the board were to agree to purchase the property. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Dr. Senegal.
Commissioners, I want to thank you all. I want to thank you all for continuing to work with us to solve the issue of facilities that are sorely in need of update so that we can meet the needs of our workforce challenges. The opportunity, if you'll go to the next slide, so the opportunity before us, as already has been stated, is to purchase 91,000 square feet of space at the Carolina Pride Car Wash Building. There's a combination, so this is us coming together as a partnership to find the dollars to purchase this space. It's a combination of the county and the college's legislative allocation that will come together to come forward with that total amount. One of the questions that's come up is where did that amount come from, and that is the appraised value of the property. That's where that that $5 million amount is from, and the balance of that is the asking price from the owner of the property. If you go to the next slide, these are some of the benefits. The thing that's changed over the last 3 to 4 years is that there's increasing pressure. If we think about some of the companies like VinFast with 7,500 jobs, Hollywood is opening up a whole nother line of operation. We've got other companies like Boom Sonic, Toyota, Wolfspeed, LP is continuing to grow, Spuntech is making additional investments, there's Eaton, there's Sunrock. The number of companies that are coming to this region as we're becoming known as an EV supplier, those are the opportunities that are coming, and we have an opportunity to well position ourselves to take advantage of that. It's also at a location that is far more convenient. In terms of traffic count, right now this facility gets 15,000 traffic count. At our current location, that traffic count by comparison point is at less than 1,000 cars a day, just for comparison purposes. We estimate conservatively that by being at this location that will result in a 7% increase in our overall enrollment, and it will also help us in terms of being able to respond to emerging industry needs with flex space, with appropriately ceilinged buildings and electricity that we do not currently have space for in our current facilities. If you'll go to the next slide, one of the other questions has been, why not new construction? And if we go back and look at some of the data that was from our feasibility study in 2019, the range of building a space that was only 40,000 square feet was between 30 and 18,000. That was in 2019. And so we know that construction costs have not gone lower, they've only gone higher. And so this is the challenge in terms of new construction. This is the opportunity, and also realize that this new construction does not include cost for equipment, and it does not, this would put us 3 to 4 years out with the way that state construction works. From the point of deciding that we want to do new construction to when we'd actually be in there, we're talking 3 to 4 years away from being able to actually be able to deliver on that. So what are the components of the CHATT building? So let's start with the health aspects. If you go to the next slide. The current facilities for health are these. So first I want to say this. When the Board of Nursing came to do our review in 2022, they were extremely pleased with my faculty, with the quality of our instruction, with our student outcomes. In fact, they were so impressed that they allowed us to increase the number of nursing students that we were able to serve. But what they were not pleased with was the quality of our facilities and our simulation space. And in fact, this is directly from their report. They described our facilities for health training as being inadequate. And in fact, the conversation that they had with us was that when they come back for their next reaffirmation, that it would not be likely without additional facility investments. These are the kinds of jobs where students with these associate degrees are going to be able to make $40,000 and $50,000, and we want to be able to continue to provide healthcare careers for people within our region. We have a current class, we have our largest associate degree nursing class currently that we're serving, and just today our new licensed practical nursing program started with over 35 students. I think we have somewhere around 38 students in that program, and that's a new healthcare program that we've just begun offering. We have the capacity to be able to offer more, but we literally do not have the space for this particular health program. If you go to the next slide and take a look at that picture, if you go back one, take a look at the picture that's there. That's the state of how the current spaces look. And on the next slide, you'll get a chance to see what the intentions are with the new space. The intention is to have a world-class hospital simulation facility so that all of our healthcare programs, including paramedic and EMT, will be able to have participate in simulation activities in addition to the clinical rotations that they're doing at our local hospitals. That's the kind of training that our local citizens deserve to have access to. Also be aware that we will continue to partner on those equipment needs. And we've already obtained over $750,000 in grant dollars for medical simulation equipment. We're holding on to those dollars in the hopes that we can use those dollars at this facility. But again, we are your partners in this work. We recognize that this is something that we have to do together. The second part of the CHATT facility is around advanced technology. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see some current pictures, and you all have seen this. You've gotten soot on your hands and on your feet, like all of us do. Many of our trade spaces have not been upgraded since the 1970s when the campus was originally built. It is very hard to prepare people for advanced technology 4.0 jobs in spaces that are from the 1970s. And even at the same time, our faculty, again, are still able to crank out students who are still American Welding Society credentialed. They're still getting nationally North Carolina certified in welding. Imagine what we could do, go to the next slide, if our welding facilities looked like that, where we would actually have space for robotic welders, for PLCs, and for upgraded technology. It would also allow us to be able to grow our welding program with simply a certificate in welding. Students are able to enter the job market at a higher rate than many of our other transfer programs. This is a program that has a tremendous return for our students. If you go to the next slide, that gives you an overview of all of the programs that we intend to transition to the CHATT program. That third column talks about all of the trade programs. We are continuing to invest in our trade programs where other colleges are walking away from these. We've been making investments in electrical, both commercial and residential, along with plumbing, HVAC. We are continuing to work to bring CDL truck driver training here. That continues to be a need, along with forklift and OSHA training. So that's the picture of what we intend to bring to the CHATT facility, right? On the next slide, I just want to walk you through sort of our logic and what we submitted for our CIP proposal. What we did when this opportunity came to us, we reached back out to the architect we'd work with for our campus master plan, and we asked for some estimates on how we could get to rehabbing and renovating the space. The initial number that we received from HH Architecture was somewhere between 16 and 19 million. That's where that number came from. Our staff, and that was only for one floor, our staff came back and looked at that data and thought that they could do better. And in fact, what we figured out that would be better for us would be to do it in a phased approach, very much like what we've done in other examples. I think Jimmy was nice enough to remind us about how we did the PESEL idea, and so we did that over a 5-year plan. We did it over time, and that seems to work for us, and so that's the idea. If we want a world-class facility, that's the strategy. You'll notice here it says 13 million. In our CIP, it's for 10 million. The other 3 will come from our legislative allocation, and the idea is that we would phase in the other needs for the programs over those 5 years. Know that the idea is that we have a new foundation director. The idea is that at the top of her list is to do a capital campaign to identify those funds from other sources. And so what I'd like to be able to tell you next year is that we found those dollars either from grants or other places, but we felt like we had an obligation to tell you what the overall cost was for us to get that to a world-class facility, all right? What I'd like to do at this point, my partner in a lot of these conversations has been the Economic Development Commission in this area, and so I don't know if you would like to ask me questions, but Philip Allen has also been extremely helpful in moving these conversations forward, and I'd like to also grab a sip of water. The medicine I'm taking is not helpful. So Philip, did you want to, Mr. Chairman, would you allow Philip to say
Sure.
a few words? All right.
Thank you, Dr. Senegal. My name is Philip Allen. And like Coach Winston said, I'm 70 years old. I've been around a pretty good while. I've been on the Board of Trustees for Piedmont Community College for 12 years. I'm pleased to report I was appointed by both Republican and Democratic governors. So I'd like to give y'all, Dr. Senegal gave you a lot of detail. I'd like to give y'all a little overview and an historical perspective of Piedmont Community College. The college has been around now for almost 55 years. A local and large group of leaders going back to the late 60s decided that Person County really needed a technical institute. So our local legislators introduced a local bill in 1969 that created Person Technical Institute. Then a local bond was passed after much public lobbying and work by a number of people in that community in the 70s. And it passed with overwhelming support to fund the building and construction of PCC at its current site. So the current campus is about 45 years old. You drive down there, it might look like it's kind of modern, but it's 45 years old. It's got a lot of wear and tear on it. It's tucked away in a remote area, and we need additional space to address the key words, our workforce development needs. I'll say that again, to address our workforce development needs. Our leaders 50 years ago realized that much more was needed to be done, particularly in the southern part of the county. So in the 1980s, after much work, we finally got 501 South, 4-lane to Roxborough. The next thing we did on the southern part of the county is we built an airport. The 90s, we built an industrial park, you got it, in the southern part of the county. We recruited major industries that located in the southern part of the county, and we built a spec building in the southern part of the county, and again, an industrial park. So now is the time, the critical time, to take the vision of our forefathers and all the people who have been working to build Person County for all these years to the next level and locate the Advanced Technology Center in the southern part of the county, at this location, at this location. Every conversation we have and we've ever had with any industrial prospect includes workforce development and a skilled workforce. Those are the two issues that come up the most. We cannot and will not compete in the absence of a skilled workforce. You will not have economic development without workforce development and skilled labor force. You know, we spend a lot of time in our current culture and society trying to define our differences, and we don't spend a lot of time trying to find the things we can agree on. I'll say that again. We need to spend more time trying to identify the things we can agree on, that we can come together on. And at the end of the day, there are two things that as parents sitting around the dinner table, the supper table, can agree on, and we all agree on, is they want for their children a good education and a good job. A good education and a good job. That's all they want. That's all they want. But you cannot have a good job without a good education. You cannot have one without the other. They literally go hand in hand. So I think we can all agree in our conversations that there's a critical need for an advanced technology center. The future of Person County, I really mean this. The future of Person County depends on it. I ask you to support this project. I ask you to support this project. I ask you to support this project in this location as part of the master plan for our entire county and for the future of our entire county. But more importantly, for the future of our young people, because they deserve to have a quality, good education and a good job. Thank y'all very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
God bless Person County.
Go ahead.
Okay. I would like to highlight some of the provisions in the purchase and sale agreement that is before you for your consideration. The closing date stipulated is August the 31st. That is the timeframe that we've identified to be able to work through the process of completing due diligence, making sure that we have completed the studies and other analyses that need to take place to ensure that this is the purchase that we want to proceed with. In addition to that, we will be going through a process to finance this purchase through the issuance of debt, and that does require going before the Local Government Commission or the LGC for approval, and then going through the process of actually issuing the debt. So our financial advisors have worked with us to determine that this debt can be included within the county's debt model without an impact on our tax rate. There will not be a need to raise taxes for this purchase. The earliest that we can get before the LGC for consideration of our application would be their June meeting. So with that in mind, the earliest we could close would be July 10th. That is the timeline that we're looking at as far as the earliest that we would be able to close on the property from the county perspective. The agreement requires a $100,000 deposit. I think it's within 3 days of the agreement being finalized. That deposit is held during the due diligence period, which is defined as through the end of April 30th. During that time frame, the county will be conducting the studies and completing the necessary paperwork, getting everything in order to go to the LGC. And we anticipate that we will be able to complete that by April 30th. The one thing that we we will not be able to do is close within that time frame. The earliest, as I said, the closing date is July 10th. The property owner, Mr. Dale Reynolds, who is here, and if you have questions for him, he may be able to clarify provisions that I may not be able to speak to. One provision within the agreement that I want to make sure that you are aware of is that beginning May 1st, the county, if we have not closed before May 1st, which we will not be able to do, would be responsible for making lease payments that the current tenant has been responsible for. They would continue to pay their lease payments through April 30th. And since we are, in effect, entering into this agreement and preventing them from going to sublet the property to someone else, the county would be agreeing to cover the lease payments, which would come out of the $100,000 deposit for the months of May, June, and July, and up to August if the closing date ends up being August the 31st. So those lease payments would be withheld from that deposit, and the remainder of the deposit would go towards the purchase price. If for some reason we did not receive approval from the LGC, then when we did not complete the transaction and close on the property, then the deposit would be refundable minus that monthly lease payment, May, June, July, August, potentially, in that case. So that's one of the provisions there that I wanted to make sure the board was aware of, that's part of agreeing to this. In addition to that, we've already discussed the purchase price of $7 million. So I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have about what I just outlined.
What is your timeline, if approved, for a public hearing for finance?
I did forget to mention that. So a public hearing will be held. We work with our bond counsel to schedule out the timeline for the financing. I don't know that date at this point, but there will be a public hearing tied to that. That will be advertised with plenty of notice. The board will get that information well in advance as well once that calendar is established for the debt process.
Questions?
I got some comments, if it's now.
Questions, comments?
This has been a closed session up until right now. And we've been talking about this for several meetings. And I would like for us to table making any vote on this until our next meeting. I think the public needs to have an opportunity to look at this. Is the purchase agreement, sale agreement public? People can see that now. I think they should have an opportunity to look at it. And then I want to thank Dr. Senegal for what you have enlightened us on the needs. I agree with the needs. I know it's there. But I feel like we've been in closed session, and now all of a sudden we're presenting it to the public. And I feel like we need to give it a couple of weeks, let it digest, if there's any comments or anything of that nature, they can come back to us, and then we make a decision at our next meeting. That's my
Mr.
suggestion.
Attorney, is tabling the, now I don't have a problem, we're gonna go through a public hearing anyway. So I mean, we're going through all those procedures. Is tabling that the right terminology we need to use here?
I mean, you could have a motion to table. You could also simply, it gets called different things, but a motion to table is appropriate if the board wants to
Yeah,
consider
I
it.
mean, it's fine, I mean, we're gonna do whichever. Doesn't matter if it's table or call something else, we're gonna go through the same hoops, meet the same deadlines, same dates and everything else, so just whatever's appropriate.
By tabling for clarification, is this gonna affect the timeline of,
So tabling it, the earliest you could consider it during a regular meeting, if you don't call a special meeting for this purpose, would be February 20th. That is when we are scheduled to have the board's budget retreat. So this could be added as a decision item on that meeting. We do not typically have public comment during the budget retreat. That's not an item. It's the time for the board to do your work to prepare for the upcoming budget. So those are just two things to consider. If you table it, are you tabling it until February 20th? And if so, will there be an opportunity for public comment at that meeting related to this item? As far as the timeline goes, that will continue to eat away at the time that we have in the due diligence period to do what we need to do to meet that April 30th deadline, and just a tighter timeline to be able to put together all the information needed to go before the LGC, which our our financial advisors have said, ideally we will have all that information by the beginning of April. So it cuts into that timeline and creates a real sense of urgency
There's
there.
a difference in tabling and table date certain, so.
And to that point, Mr. Chairman, this is what I was looking for in our rules. When you asked the question, your rules of procedure have a provision where you can postpone to a certain time or day. And so I think Mr. Sims could make a motion or ask that it be tabled to a certain time or day, or it could simply be withdrawn and asked to be brought back at a later date.
Well, we don't want to interrupt the timeline, so you want to be careful of, and I think you've clarified that, so.
go ahead, Charlie. No, you go ahead.
I was waiting to see if Commissioner Sims had any comments.
Well, I was gonna wait to see if anybody else had come up, but I was gonna.
Go ahead,
No.
Mr. Park. Mr. Palmer.
Several questions. When I viewed the campus, there was multiple areas that were like concrete falling out, structural damage, decay. Is there ongoing renovations on particular buildings as we speak?
So in partnership with the county, there's a schedule for getting roofs replaced. I think COVID sort of interrupted that schedule. It appears to be back on schedule. We noticed that there's some roofers that are out there now doing some of that work, but it's hard to fix some of those structural issues until you get the roofs fixed first. You gotta start with the roofs, and then you're able to make the subsequent fixes. So that's what we've been waiting on for some of those fixes.
How about walkways?
Same,
Same?
yep, that's where they are right now. They're doing a combination of those things.
How's the plumbing program progressing?
We've gone to now the second level for the plumbing program, so we've got folks going who finished that first level, and now they're going to the second level. So hopefully the next time I have to call a plumber, I won't have to go to my second or third choice, and hopefully it won't cost as much over time.
One final thing, I do have a comment. People are questioning the amount of money that's gonna be applied towards, if this is approved. You're looking at $7 million versus the 2019 comparison of 30 to 19 million, which we know is going to be astronomically higher. Now, by my assessment, it is a no-brainer to proceed with the purchase. I've read the contract in the email today or whatever was sent out. Ow. Cramp, I'm sorry. Oh, God. Love you, Kyle.
Is that a doctor?
Drink you some water.
You're a doctor, aren't you?
I'm the wrong kind of doctor. I can analyze your data, I can help you,
Cramps.
I can
Hits me all of
do a
sudden.
class, right?
Oh, God. Must have moved the wrong way. Anyway, the location is great. No added tax to the
That's
county
right.
citizens.
That's right.
Is-
It's meeting your guidelines to
Wonderful.
not raise your taxes. And there's an opportunity. So we could take all of the equipment from our current place to the new place, right? And not spend any money whatsoever on upgrading any of the facilities. So we could have old wine in new skin, right? That we could use that analogy. But we feel like our citizens deserve a world-class facility. And so that is our vision. As an institution, we think our citizens deserve that, and so that's why we'd like to make the investment in the equipment. That's why we'd like to have world-class simulation equipment. That's why we'd like to update and use new welding equipment and robotic equipment and not take the odd array of welding equipment that we've pieced together and that there's duct tape on some of it and we cannibalize from one piece to keep another piece running. We'd like to leave all that behind and start with equipment that speaks to the quality of the programs that we actually offer.
Okay, going back several meetings, we discussed when we came to a general consensus of helping with your help, you guys help. We started, and I made the comment, we gotta have a building first. You can do one program at a time
That's
as
right.
time progresses.
That's exactly right.
So, anyway, that's,
And our record proves that we have been your partner. We have already worked to find grants for simulation dollars. In the other county that we serve, we've raised $10.5 million to help with that seed project. We have a record of being good partners and good stewards of these resources. We will do that for this project. But as far as our CIP request, we thought it was the right thing to let you know what the overall project budget was. That's why those dollars are listed that way. And I would encourage you to vote on it tonight and say yes so that we can keep to the timeline, so that beginning this fall, we could begin things. Thank you.
Thank you.
The other thing that I would like to mention, if you do decide to move forward with approving or moving forward with this agreement tonight, there are still a few provisions that are highlighted that still need to be worked out between the two attorneys. They were able to talk today, but have not incorporated all of the suggestions, but those are not significant to the contract, and TC might be able to.
No, that's just what I was gonna say as well. I think regardless of whether the board wants to move tonight or at your next meeting, if you choose to approve the contract, you could authorize the manager to sign it with, final legal review by the county attorney's office. There's nothing of substantive difference between the drafts that we're talking about.
Mr. Chairman, I fully understand where Commissioner Sims is coming from. This is the first chance the public has had a chance to review this, and and this is not the final vote. This starts the process on it. We will be having a public hearing on this process. It will be months from now before we have that public hearing. And I think there'll be plenty, there's gonna be a lot of time in between for the public to learn, and PCC can promote it, and we can continue to hear input on it. But I'm serious about moving this project along. And I respect Commissioner Sims' opinion of, letting the public, but the public's gonna have months to review this as this evolves on that. So I believe it is important to have a decision, to move forward with that and have a decision to move forward with the process tonight.
I understand what you're saying, and again, I'm just looking out from a public standpoint, as you said. We vote on this, okay, if we vote on this tonight, I'm okay with that, but you're saying this is not the final vote, there's gonna be another vote later. Is that
Well,
correct?
there's a due diligence period, so that runs through April 30th. So we will get all of the studies to ensure that there aren't any red flags with the building. That would be an opportunity to make a decision to not move forward if there were. But aside from that, then we would, if everything checks out, we're continuing to move along with the process of funding and going through the LGC process. And there is the public hearing tied to that. So, you know, if the LGC does not approve it, or if there are other conditions that, you know, come up, I don't know exactly what that would be, but you're gonna continue to go through that process, and that there would be a point of exiting the agreement if the LGC does not approve the county's application for the funding process, or if there is another material thing that's discovered, you know, through the due diligence period. But that April 30th date is an important date to keep in mind as far as, you know, ensuring that we have had the studies completed for your consideration for the purchase.
We discussed this before, and I know one of my concerns was the lease. And again, if we push this back, then we're looking at paying lease again until we finalize the contract. Is that correct, or finalize the bill of sale?
So that lease payment is made beginning May 1st and would be required May, June, and July, being the earliest we could close in the month of July. And if anything pushes that date further to where we're still within that August 31st, you may be responsible for that August payment as well.
Can I correct that, please?
Okay, yes?
On to that.
I am Dale Reynolds.
Evening, sir.
Good evening. So, Ms. Kathy, after signing the MOU, came back to me and expressed that y'all were not happy with the lease provision that was in the MOU. So I came back with another option for you. Okay, and rather than having to start paying a lease on May 1st, as the MOU describes, I came back with the option. So let's just imagine that we were actually going to close on May 1st instead. So then there's no payments that the county would make, okay, with that. But the deposit that's put down is still in place. And you go through the LGC, and if the LGC approves everything, it's no different. There's no additional money spent. The deposit is applied 100% to the purchase. If the LGC does turn it down, and June 1st, you say, okay, we can't go forward with this, it's been turned down, then you only paid 1 month's of rent was deducted from the deposit. The rest of the deposit will be returned. If it's July 1st, it would be 2 months. So it's only deducted from the deposit, but 100% of the deposit will be applied to the purchase price. So there's no additional funds that will be applied to the purchase. So you're not actually paying rent. So we would be only reimbursed if it doesn't go through. So there's no additional capital outlay from that. That's the way it's actually proposed to be.
Right, so the amount will be deducted from the deposit, and the deposit.
If it doesn't go through.
Right, exactly.
If it goes through, 100% of the deposit is applied.
Okay, so even if it goes through in June, and that's the part that we were talking about today,
Right.
that was my understanding, but then when the attorneys talked, TC got a different understanding of that
As usual, the
condition.
attorneys made it more complex, not less.
Okay.
So my
So-
apologies.
So that was my original understanding, was that if everything goes through as planned and the LGC approves it, then 100% of the deposit will go towards the purchase price.
Absolutely.
But if it falls through and is not approved by the LGC, that's when the county becomes responsible for, the lease payments being pulled out of the deposit, not it becoming a non-refundable part of the deposit.
Right, all the rest of
Good,
it was those
thank
2
you.
months.
Okay,
And just as an additional point of clarification, is that as long as the LGC approves it at any time before closing? Because that's what,
Before August 31st,
okay, thank you, that's very helpful.
so no additional on that.
okay then, all right.
Okay, thank you, that's excellent,
Good.
thank you.
Thank you,
Okay.
Dale. Appreciate it.
No, that's good. Clear as mud?
I'm good.
Good, yeah. Yeah, I think it's all clear. So,
Uh,
yeah, I think,
Mr.
really,
Chairman.
and he had explained it in my once before.
In-
Yes.
Make a motion to approve the sales agreement for, with the partnership between Piedmont Community College and Person County Government for the building in question.
Have a motion on the floor. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None, motion carried. Thank you.